Thursday, October 8th, and we are live from Bloomberg's World Headquarters. Good morning, everyone. I'm Betty Liu, and here's what we have for you in the next hour. The Fed is now fretting about commercial real estate, everything from strip malls to office towers. Don't say we didn't tell you about this. We're going to talk to the head of real estate research at the International Strategy and Investment Group, Steve Sakwa. Plus, we're less than half an hour away from the latest numbers on unemployment. The forecast calls for initial jobless claims to fall, and it is one of the hottest stock markets in the world. We're going to be looking at whether there is still time to rush in to Brazil. In the meantime, as I'd mentioned, jobless claims coming out in about less than 30 minutes. Let's take a look at right now at how equity futures are trading ahead of that data. Better than expected results coming out from Alcoa, as well as some other companies lifting the stock markets. Equity futures, you can see higher for the Dow by 73 points and for the S&P by 0.8%. In reaction to that, treasuries are being sold off, both for the 10-year and also for the all-important 2-year. Another market we've been watching very closely this week has been gold, and it has been another record for the price of gold. It is up about 1%. 5 days in a row higher, in fact. Investor Jim Rogers tells us gold has farther to go.
I do think that during the course of this bull market, gold's going to make new all-time highs adjusted for inflation. If you go back and adjust the old highs for inflation back in 1980, gold should be over $2,000 an ounce. In my view, it will get there again sometimes during the next decade.
Well, the dollar continues to fall, as you know, and it is at a 2-week low versus the euro and an 18-month low versus the Aussie dollar, and the Australians raising their interest rates earlier this week. Well, U.S. stocks, as I mentioned, rallying, Alcoa, all of those factors are moving into playing in the markets, and Suzanne O'Halloran following the markets this morning from the big board. Suzanne.
Hi, Betty. You know, late last night, traders waited here at 4 o'clock for those Alcoa's results when they normally head home right at the closing bell. They waited. They were not disappointed, and that is the story today. Alcoa surprise profit is lifting the global markets. It's also sending money into a lot of those basic material stocks like Freeport-McMoRan and also the commodities as well. We're seeing strength in copper and gold today, all support factors for U.S. stocks. Another thing we're paying attention to is this will be the longest 4-day rally for U.S. stocks since really earlier this month. Another bullish sign for what's historically, Betty, as we know, a very difficult month for the U.S. stock market. That doesn't seem to be the case now. Alcoa also really sending us a signal that the third quarter may be better than expected, and this is really the optimism that has been fueling the U.S. markets since those March lows. I want to point out the financials as well, because we have Deutsche Bank turning positive on Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs today. They say these companies are making strides in the investment bank area, so those two stocks, Goldman, of course, seeing a bigger boost today. Another thing that's going to be very important along with earnings today, we're getting a lot of same-store sales for September. Target shares, we are waiting for results from Target. Those really, Betty, due any moment. Again, this is going to be an important trend, not only for the broader economy, but it will give us an early read on how the holiday shopping season might fare. And I do want to point out we did get consumer credit figures late yesterday. Those declined by $12 billion. That does signal that consumers are still not opening their wallets. Back to you.
Okay, Suzanne, thank you so much. And those Alcoa results we were just talking about, driving up the stock in the pre-market, up about 8% for the latest on those results and what's going on in the pre-market action, including with Marriott, which reported earnings. Let's get to Adam Johnson.
Hey, Betty. Yeah, real big news. Two very different companies, obviously, Alcoa, Marriott, but some interesting similarities that may speak to what's going to happen as we look into Q3 earnings. All right, first of all, they both beat on the bottom line. That's good news, obviously, but more importantly, they beat on the top line. That was something that was very elusive back in the second quarter. Companies were beating on the bottom line because of lower costs. They were missing on revenues. Obviously, these two companies both beat on the revenue line. Now, let me run you through detail on each of the two company reports just to give you what's going on here. First of all, in terms of Alcoa, they were looking for a loss. It came in as a gain. First time in 4 quarters that Alcoa now is back in the black, making money. That's a big surprise, certainly good news. And two important comments coming out of the conference call. First of all, CEO Klaus Kleinfeld, he says, quote, China is back. And what does that mean? Well, China coming back into the market, buying aluminum and aluminum products, pushing up the price. As a matter of fact, prices rose 24% sequentially from last quarter, back up to about 84 cents a pound for aluminum. Obviously, that is good news. Now, the second point, cost controls. Costs are down. They're way down. They saved about $2 billion. And by the way, for the entire year, they were hoping to save $2 billion. They saved $2 billion just in the quarter. Marriott, I wish we had more time. It's good news. Betty, back to you. We'll be talking about this later this morning.
Okay, Adam, thanks so much. Well, soft drink giant PepsiCo also beating. It said its third quarter earnings rose nearly 9%. Overseas sales also grew, and PepsiCo cut their costs. Now, excluding items, profit rose to $1.08 per share, and that beat the $1.03 analysts had predicted. Now, Bloomberg News spoke with Pepsi CEO Indra Nooyi last month, who said she sees a shift in the market towards soft drinks during this economic downturn.
We are seeing a decided shift towards carbonated soft drinks in this downturn because carbonated soft drinks actually are very affordable to all consumers. But interestingly, within the CSD category, the part that's growing faster than the full sugar part is the diet drinks.
Now, the company also said it is targeting an 11 to 13% growth for 2010. Well, a thumbs up for Vikram Pandit, but lousy marks for several of his top lieutenants. That is the verdict of an external assessment of Citigroup management.
Earlier this year, remember, after the stress tests run by the government found Citigroup wanting, let's say, in terms of capital, there were also some concerns raised about management, in particular because tensions had flared between Citigroup and regulators, including the FDIC. Well, people familiar with this review, conducted by consulting firm Egon Zehnder, say it is mostly positive. That's probably going to relieve some of the pressure on Vikram Pandit himself. What is not clear, however, is what happens to three key members of his management team who were faulted in this review. According to reporting by Bloomberg, the Financial Times, and the Wall Street Journal, they are Terry Dial, head of consumer banking in the U.S., Luke Caden, that's the man on your screen, and Chief Administrative Officer Don Callahan, that's him right there. Citi's board has not decided what action, if any, to take as a result of these assessments. Spokesman for the bank declined to comment, and none of the executives cited in the review return calls. For now, it is a sensitive situation. Betty, according to the Wall Street Journal, the document on which this review is printed is being circulated by hand only. No emails are going out. And get this, the document itself printed on paper you cannot photocopy, so no paper trail.
Really?
Bad news for us
Didn't
reporters,
even know they had that. And
I've
Eric,
never seen it before.
Me neither. Would be curious. So, but do we have any idea as to why they failed? Why those three executives did not turn out so well in that review?
No, that's what we're waiting to find out. Okay. So, given the fact that we're not going to get our hands on an email, we're going to have to continue working our sources at Citigroup and people familiar with the review to find out exactly what they were faulted for. All we know is that they did not get high marks.
Okay. And Eric, staying with banking, of course, Bank of America, you've been following that very closely. They're looking for candidates, including there appears to be two leading internal candidates, but John Finger, one of the major shareholders who's been so outspoken in this whole episode, says he doesn't want that.
No, John Finger's issue, and remember, he holds 1 million Bank of America shares, so he has a voice that people are going to have to listen to, is that they're tainted by the acquisition of Merrill Lynch. Greg Curl, the chief risk officer. Brian Moynihan came over from Fleet in 2004. He's been with Bank of America since then. He's running the consumer bank, but he's been there, one of Ken Lewis's key lieutenants. So his issue is that they're tainted. What he's telling the New York Post, this just came out today, is that the only person there untainted by the Merrill scandal in his mind is Sallie Krawcheck. And interestingly, Sallie Krawcheck has been making more public appearances as of late. You might say that the bank perhaps tried to slap her down by saying only Curl and Moynihan were the internal candidates in the running. But Sallie Krawcheck, she's at least out there at the very least.
Right, it's going to be very competitive nonetheless. Okay, Eric, thanks so much. Well, the number that Washington has been waiting for all week long is 829. It is a number that moves a health care reform plan much closer to being passed. So what does it exactly mean? Well, Lizzie O'Leary is on Capitol Hill with more. Lizzie.
Yeah, Betty, you guys are talking about earnings. This is kind of the Washington version of a beat. It's the number from the Congressional Budget Office that puts the latest price tag on the Senate Finance Committee's bill to move health care forward. And what this does is it comes in lower than those senators had initially estimated, a little bit higher than the CBO original estimates, but it's still under the cap that the president set to move this health care bill forward. And very importantly, cuts the deficit by about $80 billion over the next 10 years. So we got the estimates from the CBO. Very important, again, because the president said he wouldn't sign a bill that added to the deficit. So here's what the bill does. It expands coverage to about 94% of Americans from 83%. Now, it would mandate that individuals have to have insurance. Insurance companies like that. But it would also say companies can't drop people for a pre-existing condition. It taxes high-rate insurance plans, but Important for industry to watch this. This is a smaller mandate than they wanted and that they initially negotiated with the White House. That's going to be a point of tension, Betty.
Okay, Lizzie, thanks so much. Lizzie O'Leary in Washington. And coming up, why the upcoming holiday season could spell